I'd like to welcome everyone to the Software Spotlight, your front row seat to the latest innovations in AI powered software for small business. I'm Michael Burnsmark, your host, and each week we are joined by executives from leading software companies to get an insider's perspective on the emerging technologies, business strategies, and market trends shaping the future. Tune in and stay ahead of the curve when leveraging artificial intelligence to boost productivity and growth in your business. Be sure to visit softwareoasis.com to access our free weekly AI newsletter and sign up for our upcoming 2024 AI webinar series. Joining us today, we have Chad Brown. He's a serial entrepreneur, CEO, and founder of Orangedox, a secure file sharing and team collaboration platform. His company is located in Vancouver, up in British Columbia, Canada. And as I can see, he's driven for a passion of building SaaS products, and Chad created Orangedox to streamline business communication. His solution shares this vision to empower teams to work together smarter through integrated file sharing, tracking, recipient actions, and access control. And welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
So I know a lot of our listeners and viewers. A lot of people are watching on different platforms. Have been following Orangedox over the years. I know it's been a interesting journey and a pretty steady climb. And I was hoping you could give everyone a little bit of background on yourself and what led you to found Orangedox.
Yeah, it's a good one. So I started essentially with doing business consulting about 20 years ago, and grew a business there in services, and decided maybe around like 10 or plus years ago that I wanted to get away from services and more into a product. And being an engineer by sort of background, I love the idea of being able to build something, and so jumped headlong into the startup space and knew nothing about it. And had to ramp myself up. Went through a bunch of different little smaller projects that didn't really go anywhere. And then with a co-founder, I started Orangedox in 2015 or so. And it's been a bit of a journey since then.
Very nice, very nice. And so I guess just to give people a feel for the solution, what problem were you trying to solve when you started the company for individuals using Orangedox and for some of your early clients and your current clients?
Yeah. So started Orangedox with the idea of making, when Snapchat was going to be quite large at the time. So we're like, hey, maybe we can make a Snapchat for business documents. So we would send you a document and then it would expire, after a certain period of time. And we shopped that around with a bunch of different people. And we're like, hey, would you be interested in this? And they're like, oh, maybe. And then we're like, oh, we could also tell you, metrics on like what people are doing with the document, like how long they're reading it for. And they're like, oh, I'd be interested in that. But I don't really care about the expiry. So we were like, okay, well, there's a potential product there. And so we started looking at that. And then at the time, there was a forum in Dropbox where a lot of people were requesting to have the ability to track their Dropbox downloads. So if I share a file with you through Dropbox, I want to know if you downloaded it or not. And so we decided, hey, maybe there's an opportunity where we can, leverage that market and cross-sell into having tracking metrics for PDFs and things like that. So we created a product, very simple one. That was first version of Orangedox. And hence why Orangedox, Dropbox, we sort of keep that sort of like idea of keeping a similar name. And
Sure.
we ran that, and we grew pretty fast with a free product there. I mean, getting like 6,000 users in like a few months.
Sure.
And that was great. And we're like, okay. And then we realized we had to combine the products together. So we had this idea of like, we'll use this product as a way to get people, open the door as a free product, but then we'll upsell them into this sort of PDF tracking product. And that's really where Orangedox was born, with this idea of like, we're going to provide the ability for you to share your files, and we can tell you what people are doing with them, when they download them, when they open them, what pages they looked at for how long. And that's really where we started at. And for the first few years we did that. And that was really the basis of where we started with the product. But then we just really found out people just were like, they use a product, they love it for free, but they didn't want to pay for it. It's
Yeah,
like a
that's
feature.
always the
A lot of
tricky
people,
part. Yeah,
yeah,
the
like,
magic,
oh, you can
figuring
make
out.
money on this. Oh, really?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so, we had, I think we had like, tens of thousands of companies using, and like a lot of Fortune 500 companies used it too. And they just didn't really want to pay for it, which is pretty funny. So we found it really challenging to move into in getting revenue. And so at that time, we were looking at, what else can we do with the product. We shopped around. We actually tried to go around on the funding, didn't go through in 2016. And then my co-founder ended up leaving in 2017. And at that point in time, I figured, oh, that was the company's done. So I just sort of benched it. We had some ads running on the free product. So if you shared something, we would have advertisements on it.
sure.
And then I put it down for 2 years. Didn't do anything with it, just some other stuff until 2019. And that's pretty much where I thought, oh, the company's just going to slowly like taper off. I'm not going to add a lot of my energy other than to make sure it still runs and answer people's questions. And
Sure.
then it didn't. It just continued. So we knew there was something. I knew someone was there. And so I came back to it in 2019 and realized there was this opportunity with protection, with the idea that what people really were asking for over those years was, hey, how can I actually protect my documents? They wanted like password protection, which we added.
Yeah,
But then they wanted more than that. People were always saying, yeah, I can share a file with somebody and I give them a password to it. But I mean, they're just going to share it with a bunch of other people. They can easily just take that password and give it to anybody they want.
sure.
And so they're getting this opportunity of like, hey, I think I can do something with this, but specifically with secure document sharing. And that's really what I moved the project into, which was away from tracking into secure document sharing. So even though we do tracking still, that's more of like a smaller feature set than the actual product, which is now secure document sharing. So if I share something with you, I can do it in a way that, there's no password, there's no login. We essentially attach it to your device, your phone or your laptop, and then we'll only be able to look at it there. And so it's impossible to share the document once you've opened it. And then the idea being that worked extremely well in virtual data rooms. And that's exactly where we're going now, is having that secure technology integrated with things like Google Drive and Dropbox for data rooms. And that's really where our sweet spot is. And we've grown like 2.5 times in the last year, just having that. So
Wow. And I can
yeah.
absolutely see, in the finance sector for companies in mergers and acquisitions, financial service accountants, anyone that's involved in transactions of buying or selling a business or any types of sensitive documents that need to be explicitly, viewed only by a specific set of users.
Mhm.
The virtual data room is brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's one of the things that we looked at. We're like, when you're running a deal like exactly that, you want to make sure your financials are not going to be just given to anybody, or your list of what you're doing in the future, what's your actual like roadmap, especially if you don't want the competitors getting a hold of that. So definitely having data rooms and having the ability to ensure that someone's not going to share it with somebody else. So if I give it to you, only you look at it and nobody else looks at it, and
So
that's a big challenge. Yeah.
yeah, so obviously the challenge with a lot of existing solutions are just that they, you can go with trust and faith, but sometimes you have information or documents that are more sensitive than that and absolutely require a level of lockdown that isn't achieved with just a password.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, login password easily shared, and that's one thing I would never consider it being secure.
Sure.
Unless it's somebody that in the middle was looking at it, but it's really to do with people just share that all the time, and it's easy to get those. Even just email you literally the link with a username and password. So.
Yeah, and the interesting thing at a high level, I would you had mentioned that there were different integrations. You mentioned Dropbox, you mentioned Google Drive. So, if I understand correctly, so the solution is not really a data warehouse or a storage solution. You're leaving that to these other companies that's what they do. It's really a solution to protect the data within the documents.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. I think people do confuse us. They're like, oh, when they first use our product, like, where do I upload my documents? I'm like, you don't. We
Wherever
don't
you don't
upload
like
anything.
it.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean,
Yeah.
we don't host them. We don't even store them. You store them, within your Google Drive. Um, and that's exactly where we come in.
Which is interesting
Is
because it's really so people can really maintain the relationship with the platform that they're comfortable with, or
Yeah,
really continue working with whatever solution they prefer best. But this is really something that integrates or adds on to that preferred solution.
yeah, exactly. And that's the idea we take is that, if you're using Google Drive and you're collaborating there, you're adding your files there, why would you want to duplicate and have to re-upload everything to another provider just to share it? And
Sure.
we took the idea that, so what you just do is you just point it at a folder on your Google Drive and we just turn it into a data room and seamlessly be able to sync whatever files you have in there with your data room, including anything changes you make in the future. So, you don't have to worry about going in and being like, oh, oops, I forgot to upload that new file within our data room.
Yeah.
It's just seamlessly integrated with Google Drive. So you can change it on the fly, add new things, remove new things, no problem. And I think, any company that's looking at going forward, especially in a space that deals with any documents, they need to move away from dealing with the actual files to actually integrating with where people are working, which is going to be things like Google Drive. Especially as the future you go forward, you're looking at things like Google Docs. Like, they're not even files technically; they're stored somewhere on Google. You don't even have access to the quote unquote file. It's literally a product that it's all purely on the cloud.
So, what would you say are like the key features to Orange Docs that really help to separate it out?
The biggest one is the integration by a
Okay.
long shot. I mean, no one else is really doing that. We're tightly integrated, in the sense of people say, "Oh yeah, we're integrated," or companies say we're integrated with Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, all of them, and all they do is essentially just have a little chooser that lets you go ahead and grab the file from there. That's
Okay.
not what we do. We don't do that
Right.
at all. We actually integrate seamlessly with the product, so we're tightly integrated with Google Drive and Dropbox, but mainly we're focused on Drive.
Okay.
And that's our biggest differentiating factor. So you never have to worry about uploading files to a service. You just sit right on top of it. Not only that, it's also the integrations with things like Google Workspace too. So you don't even
Sure.
have to leave Gmail or your Google Drive to use our product if you don't want to. And I think
Okay.
that has a big benefit. And the next one as well is this idea of our secure sharing technology is a little bit different than what people are used to. Is that I send you something, you can open it on a limited number of devices like your phone, laptop, computer, and we essentially just only allow you to view it there for a certain period of time. And I think having that seamless, ability to have your customers open up a document without having to log in, without having to enter credentials, without having to have that barrier, it's great when you start talking about, if you're a startup looking for investment and you want your investors to look, you want them to look at the content, but you don't want them
Right.
to share it. So the
Sure.
last thing you want them to do is go through hoops and hurdles to sign up for another product. Be like, oh, you have to log into this other product. You have to create an account with something else. We don't want them to do that. It's
Right.
purely, I think, the idea that I wouldn't want to do that. So why would I ask my customers to do that?
So
So
you're keeping it secure, but you're making it accessible.
exactly, yeah, yeah, and that's, I think, those are the two biggest ones for us. And then third is price.
Yeah.
A lot of our competitors charge, well, traditionally they charge by per like megabyte of storage. There are still some competitors who do this, which I can't believe they're still around, but they charge per megabyte literally, and these rooms can cost thousands of dollars a month, and
Yeah.
we're like $65 a month, maximum.
Okay.
So you know, it's I
And
think that's also another massive factor. We see people, especially in this climate right now, where you have tightening budget constrictions. People are looking to us as well, be like, we got to get rid of this company that we're paying thousands with and use you because you're just so much cheaper.
yeah, so the solution gets to the endpoint that the companies need to get to without the complexity or cost of a lot of other alternatives.
Exactly.
And would you say is it mainly, you know, small startups and SMB clients that are using this, or is it mostly enterprise, or do you
Well,
see a whole range of different customers? Or
we see a whole range of different customers. Typically, I don't really ever talk about my customers directly. I keep them sort of behind the
sure,
scenes.
right,
But yeah, we have a whole variety. I mean, a lot of finance companies, a lot of VC companies, obviously like smaller startups. We're going to be on the list as well. We have seen, and this is more of sort of our older product. We saw, I would say, like at some point or another, most of Fortune 500 has used Orangedox at some point in time. Um, a lot of companies that come through that I've been pretty surprised with have used the product. So it's right now, I think our focus really is on a smaller SMB companies.
sure,
We don't really going after very large enterprises. However, that's going to change, I think, in the future when we look to go into, we're going to start adding into another feature, which is document signing, to be able to easily sign a document. And really, our competition is not going to be things like DocuSign, but we're really going to look at having an easy way for you to sign like a contract without having to run through a bunch of hoops or hurdles. So take the same idea we did with data rooms, which is quick, easy, simple to set up, inexpensive, and take that to document signing as well. So you could simply just choose a Google Doc and then sign it within a few minutes or a few seconds, really.
yeah. And it's interesting. I think some of the most brilliant solutions can be explained in a sentence. It's
Yeah,
because
exactly.
yeah, no, the use case is absolutely crystal clear. And as far as compliance, I know a lot of companies have different levels of needs for compliance. Is that based on your end, or is it based more on the end where the product, the data is being stored, or both? Can you talk to that?
Both. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've had some questions about like SOC compliance and so that, which, we haven't gone through yet.
Right.
Um, But I think, when companies do use our product to be compliant. So we had a customer recently who was saying they wanted to use it a little bit of a side use case. They wanted to use it for training material. And they want to make sure that obviously their employees were reading the material and actually going through it. So that's sort of using that feature that we have, which is a tracking feature. And that was for compliance, straight up. They were like, we have to be compliant. We have to
Sure.
comply with, our whatever compliance they're going through, and that required them to ensure that their employees were actually being trained up on this health and safety material. So customers do use us a lot for that.
Hmm.
And then, of course, people do ask us all the time, where do we store the data? And we tell them we don't unless we are previewing the file.
Sure.
And then obviously we put up a security white paper that describes that. But I think in the future, something that we need to look at is becoming things something like SOC compliant. And that will help a lot because then it gives people the peace of mind to be like, oh, like we're doing,
Not
the right
only do
things
they
to
do
do
all of
here.
this, they have that too. I
Exactly.
got
Yeah.
you. So if you were to bullet point the features that a customer would achieve by adding Orange Docs into their existing solution, what are the high level, from most important to just kind of nice to have features?
Right. Number one, data rooms. That's why people really pay for the product. That's the biggest one by far. Having secure data room with that integration with Google Drive or Dropbox. We support Dropbox too. And I think that's the biggest for sure. From there, the next one will be tracking. So we do document tracking. So anytime anything in the data room or whatever you share, it doesn't have to be data room, it can be a single file. We can track specifically when it was viewed or downloaded if you allow that. We can prevent downloading too. So you might be able to share things like a PDF. And we can say, we don't want you to download it because it's secure. We don't want someone to download the file and share with somebody else. But we can also tell you, what pages they read and for how long on that PDF. And then it's not just PDFs, but a whole bunch of different types of files like Google Docs, Sheets, Slides, things like that. And so really that's sort of like the second main feature other than the security. And then from the later ones are going to be things like branding. One of the things we do as well is making sure that you can brand your portal to look like your company and not like it came from Orangedox.
Sure.
One of the things that a lot of we have pushed back. This is going back a little ways, but DocSend is just a Dropbox company. But that was one of the things that people really hated was that I did not want to receive another DocSend file. So we do try to make sure that it looks like your company is that, and that's probably one of the more of the nicer to have features. Yeah, and we also have a variety of different types of tools for marketing as well. And that comes more from our legacy product. So things where you can publish files online, you can run your own portal to look if it's yours. And that's really more for the tracking side to say, hey, if I got marketing material and I have it on my website, I want to know what people are doing with it. Um, and then obviously we had things like lead tracking as well. So you could have a file that you maybe share with your customers that they have to enter their email in to get access to, and you can build a bit of a lead list based upon that marketing material. And
Sure.
those are more sort of our marketing products that we're not only not pushing as much anymore, really sort of focused on that security side now.
That kind of answers that question. So at a high level, the solution itself sounds like it's pretty mature at this point. Obviously,
Yeah, been around for a
there's
while.
there's obviously always room to evolve and add other technologies and features and the like.
Mhm.
But can you give, obviously not speaking about specific clients if you don't want to, but can you give some examples of companies using the solution and, what they saw
Yeah,
after getting up and running on it, maybe a before and after, or just some examples with maybe some measurable numbers or statistics that would help people understand how the solution benefits different companies.
yeah, for sure. Give you maybe a couple of different examples. One would be just recently. I've had actually a new sales associate we have hired up outreach to a customer who had left the product, and we're like, oh, why did you leave? And their answer was pretty simple. They'd been on there for a year, and they said, "Well, it did exactly what we wanted to do. We actually were able to have our company acquired by using Orangedox."
Sure.
And that was a great thing. We're like, "Wow, that's awesome! It's awesome to hear that. You hear it where like someone be that successful." And we've heard that a few times from customers who use a product for typically around anywhere between 6 months to a year, depending on
Yeah.
what you're using it for. But typically for a funding cycle or for M&A, it would be about that time period. And they'd be like, it worked great, did exactly what I needed to do, and I was able to either raise my round. In this case, was able to sell the company, which was a fairly substantial company.
Neat.
So it's great to hear those kind of success stories from our customers. And then we have other customers who've used us, and one does a lot of recruiting. They run a recruiting company, and they've used us for many years. They've been with us since 2015, so they use it more on the tracking side. And they actually left us a review recently, and they're like, yeah, it's been imperative to running our company, to make sure we understand what people are doing with the material that we send, which tends to be candidates for placements within companies. So for recruiting.
Yeah, and
So,
I think it's just amazing the number of solutions that companies rely on, day in and day out, that have just become core to what they're doing. And I think, one thing that we're seeing is like a continued consolidation of tools. So I think something like this that's really focused on one specific area is very much needed, and
mhm.
especially for the markets that you mentioned. I think at the end of the day, there are quite a few M&A firms out there. There's quite a few VC firms. There's quite a few companies that are, going through, financial, transitions where they need to set up a data room, whether it's a sale or a round, like you mentioned. So
Mhm.
really a very, very needed solution. And it sounds like the product itself. So are those the main two integrations, or are there other
Yeah.
types of
So
integrations that companies
so yeah,
can
the
can
main ones would be like obviously Google Drive, Google, and obviously Dropbox are the main ones, because of
Mhm.
the, like I said, we call it tight integration. I mean, literally the security you have in Dropbox, or in this case, but me in the case would be Google Drive, is also replicated within Orangedox. So if you can't share the file from Google Drive, you won't be able to share it in Orangedox.
Got it.
And that's the kind of integration we have, where it's like, you can only do what you're supposed to be doing. Um, but also, I say integration wise, things like Google Workspace is a big one. So having it integrated within Gmail and Google Drive. We also have a Gmail plugin for doing tracking of attachments, that was from more of our legacy product, things like that. But when it comes to integrations, we've been really specific to be like, we want to make sure we're really niche in what we're doing. Some people have asked us, oh, are you going to do OneDrive? And I'm like, probably not.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons for it, we just don't see the market with things like that. Or
Makes
Box
sense.
is another one.
Yeah.
Box already includes a lot of tools that lets you do similar stuff. So like, well, why would we bother going there? I think really where we fit really well is that Google ecosystem. Google's idea really is provide a very sort of bare bones product, which provides you with the key things you need. Like, you have your documents, you have your email, but then the rest they sort of lean on the third party providers like us to provide those sort of features going forward.
So if you were to say that the main features that differentiate the solution from other companies out there that have similar solutions, what would you say those are?
For sure, the tight integration with Dropbox is by
Yeah.
far the biggest one. Oh, sorry, Google Drive. We're
Yep.
focused on Google Drive, and also Dropbox, but definitely Google Drive, I think, is the biggest one. And like I say, having that feature to be able to securely share without having to have credentials shared is another large one, not requiring your customers to sign up for a product. And then I think the next one that's going to be a really big one for us is going to be by the end of the quarter, this document signing feature, which is going to allow people to be able to sign something like a Google Doc, do that within their data room, and not have to worry about creating these templates that are very like onerous on the person who's sending the contract or the file to be signed. It's more of like a one-click solution. I think
Yeah,
that's really
and
big.
I'm going to say that the UX and the ease of use is obviously a key point to the whole solution. What
Yeah.
would you say? What are the trends that you're seeing in the secure document sharing space, like the mega trends?
Trends. It's interesting because honestly, this space has been, I would say, a little stagnant for quite a
Yeah,
while. I think so. To give you a history of like virtual data rooms, obviously they started as this idea of a data room, like a law office, and you physically go in there and read the document, and then you leave. And the idea of taking that online was something that happened in the early 2000s, and people had the idea like, oh, and that's where this idea of a lot of these companies came to fruition around the early 2000s with this new idea of putting everything on the internet, and they're still around. And I think the idea of charging ridiculous sums of money for storing your data securely is something that really is an antiquated notion today. I mean, Google Drive, companies have no problem storing their entire company data on Google Drive, and the reason why is because it is secure. It has been
yeah,
proven to be that way. So you don't really need to charge for that anymore. And I think that's one of the big trends is moving from, yes, you're a storage of secure storage to you're not secure storage anymore. You're secure sharing. And I think that's really where we started with. We didn't even bother with the storage part because we integrate with things like a secure storage platform like Google Drive. And so I think the trend has moved from storage to secure sharing. And now we want to be not just secure sharing, but also, to do everything to do with what you do as a company with your files, like document signing and things like that. We want to incorporate that as well. So I think the trend has moved away from the storage to the sharing. And I think that's going to continue. And I think what's going to happen is you see a huge consolidation of these companies. I think the older antiquated ones are going to go away because if they don't integrate tightly, they just won't be around. People aren't going
sure.
to be like, hey, I want to use your service, but like, do you integrate with Google Drive? They say, oh yeah, we do. And then when you actually look at it, you're like, well, yeah, I could choose a file from there, but I mean, what does that really matter? It's not really the
Right.
integration. That's the lowest thing you can possibly do. So you could say you integrate online. That's what
Yeah.
So I think unless you have a company that is going to be niche to a provider like Dropbox, Google Drive, the big ones, I think you're going to see those companies start to
Neat.
move on.
And a lot of listeners are actually able to view the podcast. Is it possible you could share a tab where you could give us a high level demo of how the solution actually works? I think, what do they say? A picture is worth a thousand words, right?
Yeah, for sure. Let me just see what I got here.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And I think it's interesting that this is a segment of the market that is really in its own right important, yet not. You're probably one of the first people on the podcast that the first thing they said to that question of trends was AI. I don't know that
Yeah,
there's really a whole bunch
I
of
can tell you all about AI. Yeah,
yeah.
I interesting when you mentioned AI. I'll say this on the side when I get this loaded up here is. I think a lot of people are talking about AI, but I think being a founder who's been around for many years in this space, I've seen trends come and go. And this is not the first time we've seen AI, chat AI specifically, being a trend. And I think that's really where right now everyone wants to talk about it. Everyone wants to talk about their company having AI. But honestly, I think, you know, unless your AI is doing something specific that actually is adding a lot of value, I don't really see the
Yeah, no, I'm
the
right there
value
with
there.
you.
So I think for us, it's interesting that we actually try to incorporate machine learning years ago into our platform, with the idea of being able to back in where we're looking more at the marketing space, the tracking space. Um, One of the things that we were looking at was if I was to share a file with a company, would we be able to follow that file through the company? So if I shared it with you, are you going to forward it to your manager, to your CEO? Could we unearth those people? And we use machine learning or fuzzy logic pretty much to help determine who in the company was actually looking at the files. The funny thing is because because it was fuzzy, it was not easy to describe how the system was doing that. We had a really difficult time selling the product because people didn't really understand it. They're like, oh, like, so I'll know exactly. I'm like, well, you won't know exactly because that person is not going to tell you who they are. We have to
Right.
infer who they are. And then people didn't really understand that. And they're like, oh, I don't get it. So, well, we'll be able to tell you with a degree of accuracy who this person may or may not be. But in the end, people just got really confused with it. So,
Yeah. Makes sense.
but I
So
think,
what are we looking at here? This is the
yeah,
interface that
this is
an
the interface.
individual would have where they log in.
This is where you log in and you have the ability to create your room. This is our full application. This isn't our integrations with Google Workspace specifically, but yeah. So what we can do here is be able to create a data room. You can share individual files securely or track them. This is for
Okay.
more of the market material, being able to sort of share and track market material. But our sort of main product is that data room product, and be able to not only create a data room, and have the ability to view the documents there, but also to be able to see specifically, who's looked at that room. So in this case, we can see we shared a couple of different people, myself and our demo account, and we also can see specifically that this demo account we looked at certain particular files within the room itself, and won't really walk through the entire feature set of the product, but I can give you a little
Sure.
idea of what that room might look like. So one of the things we can do with your data room is keep everything very simple. What we're going to do is we're going to firstly have it linked directly to a folder on your Google Drive. So in this case, we can see that it's linked to, I have to log in here if I remember the password. Okay, let's just pretend we just didn't go there. So essentially, this is linked directly to Google Drive, a
Sure.
folder itself. And the idea being that it's going to sync all the files from your Google Drive with Orangedox at all times. So whatever you add or remove files, we'll automatically include that in the room itself.
Got
You
it.
can also do things like whether or not you want to do allow downloading. So do I want my users to be able to download the files? Because as soon as a user downloads a file, they have full access to that. They can share whoever
Right.
they want, post it online, and do anything they want to. So a lot of our customers do say, hey, listen, I'm going to share a lot of PDFs, Google Docs, sheet slides, things that we can preview, and I want to ensure that no one can download it. And
Makes
that way we
sense. Yeah.
keep it with our ecosystem. And then the next thing is like you can choose specifically when you set the room up how long a device that you. So the way we secure things is setting a limited number of devices per person. So if I send you the access to a particular data room, you'll have access on one device, and that could be like your phone or computer, like your laptop at work, laptop at home, whatever it might be. And you'll only have access once you open it on that device, and we warn you about that before you open it. And then you'll have access for 3 months, and then after that, it expires. And the idea really is ensuring that you're not going to share something indefinitely forever. That way you
Right.
might forget, oops, we got this data room still available, and that room's been closed, deal's been closed for a while or didn't go through. We can ensure that we sort of clean up that access as we go.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And then finally, there's the participants who you have in the room, and you can, enable disable access at any time as well. So you're ensuring that, only that person's going to be able to view the content for as long as we want them to. But if something happens and the deal doesn't go through, or this person maybe is just kicking the tires of the company to find out more information, then we can just disable access to that as well. The final thing I can sort of show you here maybe is just a little bit what the room looks like. So in this case, this is our demo company. We call it Morale, and we brand it for them. And we can look at specifically, like, here's our room with all the different folders. So this is, again, directly synced with Google Drive. So anything within those folders is going to be shown automatically within the room itself as well. So we got this little marketing sheet. You can look at that online. Again, everything's preview online. It's all made for mobile as well, so you don't have to worry about having your PDFs and everything like that. Maybe are a little bit larger, take a while to download. It's all sort of instantaneous through the product as well.
Sure, neat.
It's a real simple way to get in and be able to sort of have that similar view. And the nice thing about also the product is that you can, add that branding. You can change your branding around to say, hey, I don't really want to have it laid out that way. I can lay out a different way, or maybe it's a sort of like a more of a simple file view to everything. So it's really sort of an easy way to share your room, to get it sort of synced with your Google Drive, and have the ability to track that particular content as well. So as we look through things, we can go back to our data room and see specifically what we were looking at. So we can see that we've done a couple different previews of content, and we can see we looked at that. That made the annual report. That might be a little while ago. So we can see what pages were looked at and for how long as well. So we can see specifically what people are doing with the content. Right down to like what day they looked at it. In this case, it was probably a demo I did back in December 14th, and what hour it was actually looked at as well.
So a couple of questions come to mind. So with the branding, obviously design, logo, assets, things like that are part of the branding. Is there a possibility for a company to customize like a subdomain or something like that if they want?
Yeah, we did have that feature available. We still do. Most companies typically don't care about that as much anymore. I think we saw that a lot, maybe probably about 5 years ago. A lot of companies were really interested. We got to have a subdomain, and we do offer that still. But a lot of companies now, they don't care about it as much as before.
And probably, as you found, a lot of times users will tell you one thing, but then when it comes to actually using or paying for a particular feature or solution, it's very different.
Yeah. It's really interesting with the branding too, is that I've seen Fortune 500 companies send material out that is branded as Orangedox, so they don't even bother paying for the branding. And they're using we had a legacy product, offered a couple of years ago, where we would give it to you for free, but we'd have advertisements on it. And they would send content out that way. And I'm like, you're a Fortune 500 company. Why are you paying the minimal amount to have the advertisements removed from your product? So it's really interesting to see small companies who really care about it, and then Fortune 500 companies who don't. And you think that these things would be something they care about, but sometimes it isn't.
It's interesting.
But I think now with a lot of the companies that we work with, again, more in the SMB space, they really do care to make sure that it looks like it comes from them, because of the idea that it's a trust thing too. Like, hey, this is coming from us. This is our content. This is, we own it. And I think it really boils back down to that whole feature set of security.
And I would think, obviously, if it's a venture capital or some other kind of firm where they're representing either themselves or a client or something like that would be important. One other question, and this might be an idea for you in terms of another opportunity for the product. Obviously, you integrate with the different places that people may want to store their data.
Yep.
Is it possible, let's say another company had a solution where they wanted to offer this as a feature within their solution? Is there any type of capability on that?
Yeah. Interesting point. We have had conversations in the past with companies who want to integrate, and that's one thing that we've always looked at potentially doing, especially when we're more geared towards marketing and just doing document tracking, was adding that as like a feature into another product. Like we had a company was like, oh, we do quotes. We want to know as a feature, could we do tracking of that too and integrate you? Interesting enough with virtual data rooms, it's a very niche, smaller market. And so you don't see a lot of other companies who have like a large product where they really want to integrate that little small piece. Um,
Yeah. So they may
so
just refer a customer to you and say, hey,
yeah,
here's a great solution.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly that. So um, when we do document signing, that might be something that we might do. Hopefully, in the sense of like where our niche is going to be is signing a Google Doc, signing something that you really can't easily sign unless you spend a bunch of time to go through something like DocuSign. Something simple like an NDA that you want someone just to send quickly and get them to sign, and then you're done. I think that's really where there's a potential for integration as well in that. And that's something we're actually set up for, funny enough. But we never really actually pursued, uh, you know, unless there was a good strategic partner that we could find that would work very well with us.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of alluded to it, but I'll ask anyways. Has the business been pretty much bootstrapped, or have you taken outside funding, or has it
No,
grown
no funding.
organically? Or
Bootstrapped it. We did look for funding back in like 2016, I think it was. Yeah.
congratulations.
And yeah, so yeah, pretty much. And it's been great. The last couple of years have been really good. Especially last year, I say we grew like 2.5 times in a year, which is awesome. And we like to do that again this year. Probably grow twice the size. And yeah, keeping the team small. And that's one thing I love working with is a smaller team and not having. I don't need to make this company massive. That's the thing I like about this is you make it very profitable and keep things small, keep things lean. It's
Sure.
definitely where the things I like. So will we take funding in the future? Who knows? But right now we don't need to by any means. So yeah,
That's okay. No, I think it's a journey, and obviously, you can either take take time or money, and
yeah,
you've
exactly,
taken the time
exactly,
route,
yeah,
to
yeah,
just
no,
building it
totally,
one brick at a time.
yeah, exactly. And I think I love the idea of bootstrapping. I think the funny thing is when I first started, looking at startups 10 years ago, it was like you take money, and if you don't, they're like, oh, or you could bootstrap, and then there's sort of like a smirk on their face, like oh, like it was sort of like a I don't know, a sort of a horrible thing to do, or like it was a shameful thing to do. And I think that's really changed over the last little while, especially the last year, where you see, like a VC friend of mine is telling me that in 2024 you're going to see like a tidal wave of startups that are going to be going bankrupt,
Yeah,
meaning
and
because
they took
there is no
money.
money out there, right? And there hasn't
Yeah.
been, and they burnt it all last year. So, and the great thing for us are like, oh, cool. Well, we've grown. We've done the opposite. We've grown tons. We have tons of cash. We have no problem there, and so we can continue growing at the pace we want to, which is great. So,
Neat.
I love the idea of doing that. And I think nowadays people are more looking at bootstrap companies and being like, oh, that's something you can do, and it's not a shameful thing to do. You don't
No,
need to
not at
have
all.
a
This
company
is
that has, yeah.
Yeah, this is my third bootstrap startup, so I'm
No,
right
great,
there
yeah,
with you. Do you
yeah.
have any advice for any entrepreneurs or companies that might be listening in terms of things that help to get the momentum going for a new solution as
Yeah.
they're
Well, number
starting with
one,
zero?
yeah. Number one, don't feel like you have to raise funding. You don't. You don't need to. I think the idea, like just like yourself, is that you can, like, just like us, we were able to weather this storm, quote unquote, of this economic storm, but we've had no problem at all. We've grown and done very well in it. And I think that being profitable forces you to always, or being bootstrapped forces you to be profitable from day one. Because if you're not, you're not eating. So I
Sure.
think that's something where that's a great thing for people to realize that you don't have to always go for funding. Number two, I think there's a lot of like buzz right now on AI, and I got to do AI something. And I think yes, that can give you some extra traction. It can give you a little bit of maybe like some maybe some news written about you, things like that. But in the end, customers are going to know. Is the AI some part of your product, or is it just purely a marketing ploy? And I think right now there's a lot of marketing ploys right now with AI, and I think focusing your product on AI purely because it's the buzzword of the day, you're going to find next year it's going to be another buzzword, and then you're going to be out. So I
Yep.
think focusing on a product that has value to your customers, that if it includes AI, great, and it adds value, great. If it doesn't, don't bother looking at it. So I think those are things to keep in mind. Like I say, I've gone through, like probably like yourself, there's so many buzzwords. Like every year or two, there's a different buzzword. And it's a different thing that everyone's jumping on, and all VCs are jumping on it. So I think you have to always be careful of those sort of things.
Yeah,
And the
and
next
I'll
thing is,
tell you, I would
yeah.
agree with you. And the interesting thing, I speak to hundreds of different founders of organizations at all different levels, from bootstrap to venture funded to all, partnerships, all kinds of different organizations. And probably the one common thing that I hear from every founder is the fact that the cost of acquiring each additional incremental or new customer through paid channels is just growing exponentially in terms of the cost, and not providing the returns that they saw in the early years, and definitely
Mm.
not attainable in terms of a model to drive business forward.
Yeah, and funny enough, we don't have any paid channels. Probably without reason. And we've tried doing that as well, and realized that paid channels are extremely difficult to make profitable. I think doing things like an account-based marketing instead procedure, where you maybe use paid to specifically target certain customers, and maybe use that to get brand awareness, has
Sure.
value. But being on the other side as well, like we still have a free product with Orangedox that does this simple tracking and publishing, and we have ads running on that. And we've seen that product where we were gaining most of our money through that maybe 2 years, over a year ago. We had most of our money coming to that channel from like paid advertising, and now it's dropped by, it's like a third of the income, and there really isn't much different traffic. And we're seeing that because of two things. One is because of AI, where you're having these sites created that are sucking up advertising revenue, because
Yeah.
they're creating thousands of articles that are just sort of garbagey articles, but they're getting advertising on it. And then
Yep.
second to that also is the fact that just the climate. I mean, the first thing people do when, or companies do when they have like a restriction in cash flow, is axe the marketing budget. It's the easiest thing to do. And, so to that point, I mean, yeah, if you're a startup now, I think the thing to do is really to look at like, how can I get it to market without having to pay mass amounts of money in marketing? Uh, and part of that is just like that growth hacking, quote unquote. We use Quora quite a bit to start, and it has been an engine that's worked extremely well for us, and get us traction there. And then obviously, doing a lot of things like content has been something that recently we focus a lot more on, but previously we've had, but now the focus is really big on that. It's becoming more of the experts and things like that. So there's lots of different ways you can get out there. It's just a question of, being creative with what you do.
Very nice, very nice. No, I think that kind of brings it home in terms of, not only the solution, but as far as, bootstrapping a company. Can you share with us, for listeners that are interested in getting up and running with Orangedox, or even just want to give it a try? Obviously, we'll leave a link in the show notes and all of that, but are there different pricing models, different ways to get started? How would someone decide which version of Orangedox to go with?
Pretty simple. We try to keep our pricing extremely simple. So, you start with 2 weeks free trial, like gives you access to everything on the platform for 2 weeks for free, no credit card required. I know that I always hate having to enter my credit card, and then, you forget. So that's why I decided not to do that. So anybody can sign up for 2 weeks for free with a click of the button. And then, there's only really a couple tiers we have. So we have a pro product that really has to do with the tracking. So if you just want to do tracking, we recommend just doing that one. And it's, $15 a month, we pay yearly. And then you have the business product, which is a full suite. And that gives you all that data room, secure sharing, branding as well. And that's $45 a month if you pay yearly. And I think, and then of course we have a Teams platform, which is more to do with, companies that need to have multiple people on the product. And we build to sell them as well. So really easy to get started. You get full access to the suite, full access to the business product. And then if, you determine, hey, I'm just using the tracking, I want to do something different, you can, sign up for whatever one you need. So
Got it. And
real
then as
simple.
far as users, that's one other point that I was wondering. Is the product pretty easy to scale? I mean, can you add a large number of users if you need, or just have a few users? Can you add and subtract users?
Yep. Definitely. I mean, like we had the ability to have a Teams license. That's something that you can talk to us about. So right now we don't have the ability for you to add that manually, but talk to
Right,
us and we have a team with as many people as you like on there. And so typically we sell a Teams license starting at 3 users, and that the idea being
right,
that if I'm like a CEO of the company, I'm making a data room and it's my account, that's great. But then what happens if I go on vacation or I'm away from the office and I can't do something and we need to add participants or someone to the room? That's where we say, hey, it's good to have a couple other people in your office have access to that. So they can come in on your behalf and add some users or maybe, manage the access that needs to be, maybe even make a new room that needs to be done. So it's really nice to have that, flexibility rather than having to always focus on one person. They always have to be doing the room. So, and yeah, it's easy enough for us to add that for you as well on your behalf.
great. Any final thoughts or things that we didn't cover that you wanted to make sure we let the listeners know?
No, other than, yeah, I mean, like if you're starting a startup, I think it's always, it's keeping that value of your customers and always chasing that, what the customer really wants. So that's one thing would be really, for us, super customer centric, and listening to them. And, with this whole, for example, our new document signing feature we're coming out at the end of this quarter, we literally had a customer that I was chatting with on last Friday, and they offhand mentioned, "Oh, it'd be good if this did document signing," and I was like, "Funny enough, you said that." So
Yeah.
listening
Oh,
to
that's
customers
crazy.
is really good. I mean, I think a lot of startups, everyone says that, but not everyone does it. It's sort of funny. People really do focus a lot on money, on like raising money, getting whatever. But if you listen to your customers and listen to what they want, and really focus on providing really good customer support and talking with their customers as people, I think you'll have a successful startup. So
Neat. Well, I really appreciate your taking the time to join us on the Software Spotlight today. And just want to give everybody an idea as to where we're heading. So, on the next episode of the Software Spotlight, we have Andy Caruso. He's the head of marketing for a company, Nacho Nacho. They're the world's largest B2B SaaS marketplace. And he's focused on driving partner-led growth over at Nacho Nacho. The company is an efficient matchmaker between buyers and sellers of SaaS products and leveraging predictive analytics to recommend relevant software-based solutions based on purchasing behavior. Uh, Nacho Nacho team aims to offer how businesses and transform how they manage their spend, consolidate subscriptions, and lower costs overall. So once again, Chad, thank you for joining us on the Software Spotlight. And for our listeners, be sure to visit softwareoasis.com to listen to past episodes of the podcast and to sign up for our weekly newsletter and webinar series that is launching the end of this month.